At 5:15 a.m. on a Tuesday in late September, the space beside Darius in the queen-sized bed was cold. He was 37 years old, a man who made his living explaining the elegant certainties of calculus to community college students for a salary of $58,000 a year. And the most devastating variable in his life was the woman who was supposed to be his constant. He reached out a hand, his fingers tracing the undisturbed, cool surface of the $400 Egyptian cotton sheets they'd bought 2 years ago, a purchase Imani had insisted on. The indentation from her head was gone from the pillow. She must have been gone for hours. Darius sat up, the muscles in his back tight with a familiar low-grade anxiety. The air in their North Nashville duplex, a modest brick structure they rented for $1,950 a month, was still and quiet. Through the window, the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and gray. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet landing softly on the worn hardwood floor. He owned this floor. He'd paid the security deposit. He'd paid every month's rent on time, from his Nashville Community College paycheck. Imani's money, she always said, was for investing in the business. He pulled on a pair of gray sweatpants and a faded Tennessee State University sweatshirt, the fabric soft from a decade of wear. In the kitchen, he went through the motions that anchored his morning. He ground the coffee beans, a $14 bag of Bongo Java he treated himself to each month, and filled the coffee maker, the scent of dark roast, a small comfort in the silent house. As the machine gurgled to life, he stared out the kitchen window at the small patch of grass he meticulously mowed every Saturday. He saw his own reflection in the dark glass, a black man of average height, his locks tied back, his face showing the first signs of lines around his eyes. He looked tired. He felt tired. Imani's big day. That's what she'd called it for weeks. The final close of her fintech startup's Series B funding, a monumental achievement that would, she promised, change everything. He had no idea how right she was. He had supported her from the very beginning, from the moment she'd first sketched the idea for fintech, her payment processing company, on a napkin at a booth in the pancake pantry. He was the stable ground beneath her soaring ambition. He was the one who graded papers at their dining room table until midnight so she could use their savings to pay a graphic designer for a logo. He was the one who believed in her. The coffee maker beeped its completion. He poured the steaming black liquid into a simple ceramic mug, one he'd owned since college. No sugar, no cream. He liked to taste the thing itself. He sat at the $1,200 oak dining table, the same table where he'd held her hand when the first investor said no, and the 10th and the 20th. He opened his laptop, an aging MacBook Pro he'd had for 6 years. He had papers to grade, futures to gently nudge toward the correct answer. Then, at exactly 6:03 a.m., an email slid into his inbox. The sender was his father, James Jackson. The subject line was 3 simple words: "For your records." His father was a man of few words, an immense, quiet influence, a legend in private equity who had built his firm, Jackson Capital, from the ground up. Darius and his father had a relationship built on mutual respect and a comfortable distance. They spoke on holidays and birthdays. An email on a Tuesday morning at 6:03 a.m. was an anomaly of the highest order. His heart hammered against his ribs. He clicked it open. What have you done when someone you love reveals they never really saw you at all? Have you ever had to look at your life and realize the foundation was a lie? Let me know your story in the comments below, because we're about to see how Darius handles a truth that will shatter his entire world. The email contained no text in the body, just a single attachment, a PDF file named fintech_series B_cap table_final.pdf. He felt a cold dread creep up his spine. A cap table, a capitalization table, He knew what it was. Imani had explained it to him once, years ago, her voice full of the jargon that had become her second language. It was the blueprint of a company's soul, a list of who owned what, who got what, and who truly mattered. He took a sip of his coffee. It tasted bitter. With a trembling finger, he clicked on the file. The life Darius thought he had was built on small, tangible acts of service. It was built on the scent of the sausage and onion pasta sauce he made from scratch because it was Imani's favorite, simmering on the stove when she'd stumble home, exhausted from a 14-hour day. It was built on the squeak of his red pen against paper as he graded algebra exams at their oak table, the quiet sound a steady rhythm under the frantic clicking of her keyboard. He was the backdrop to her brilliance, the reliable, unassuming infrastructure that allowed her genius to flourish. He remembered the early days 5 years ago in a much smaller apartment off Charlotte Pike. The rent was only $1,100 a month, and they were always broke, but they were broke together. He'd come home from a long day of teaching remedial math to find her surrounded by whiteboards, her beautiful natural hair, a cloud of tight coils, puffed into a messy bun, her eyes alive with fire. Her skin, a deep, luminous brown, seemed to glow even in the dim light of their living room. "I've got it, Dee," she'd say, grabbing his hand. "A way to streamline international payments for small businesses. We can cut out the big banks." He'd put his $600 paycheck on the counter, and she'd hug him, burying her face in his chest. "This is our seed money," he'd joked. She hadn't laughed. She'd looked at him with an intensity that took his breath away. "Don't joke. One day I'll pay you back 1,000,000 times over." He didn't want to be paid back. He just wanted her. He paid for the $3,000 Wacom tablet she needed to design the user interface, putting it on his credit card and paying it off in $150 increments for 2 years. He sat beside her, holding her hand, while she practiced her pitch deck, his simple, logical questions helping her to refine the weak points. "You're good at this," she'd say. "You see the holes." He wasn't seeing holes. He was just applying the logic of mathematics to the chaos of her ambition. As fintech grew, so did the distance between their two worlds. Her success was measured in funding rounds and user acquisition rates. His was measured in the quiet click of understanding in a student's mind. The first sign of the fissure was small, almost unnoticeable. She'd won a local startup competition, a prize of $25,000. He'd suggested they use it to finally pay off his student loans, the last of which was a stubborn $18,000 balance. She'd looked at him, a strange, pitying expression on her face. "Darius, honey, we don't use capital for debt. We use it for growth." She used the $25,000 to rent their first real office space, a tiny 2-room suite in a building near Vanderbilt that cost $2,000 a month. And she bought herself a new handbag, a $4,500 Celine she said was an investment in her image. He looked at his own watch, an $89 Timex he'd had since his own graduation, its face scratched and the leather band worn smooth. He didn't say a word. He just kept paying the rent on their duplex in North Nashville, a neighborhood she was starting to call a little rough. The language of their life changed. He spoke of students and lesson plans. She spoke of burn rates, cap tables, and Series A. Vaughn Hayes entered the picture as her first major hire, a CFO who had done a short stint at a firm in Atlanta. He was slick, with a smile that never reached his eyes and a wardrobe of suits that cost more than Darius's monthly salary. Darius felt an instant, primal dislike for the man. Vaughn looked at Darius like he was a piece of furniture in Imani's house, unremarkable and easily ignored. One evening, about a year ago, Darius was in the living room, watching a Predators game with the volume low. Imani was in the kitchen on a speakerphone call with Vaughn. He wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their duplex wasn't large. Her voice, usually so careful, was relaxed, conspiratorial. "We need to be aggressive with the Series B valuation," Vaughn was saying. "The board is getting conservative." "I'll handle the board," Imani had said, her voice dripping with confidence. "They love me. The only issue is perception." "What perception?" Vaughn asked. There was a pause. Darius held his breath. Then came the words that would echo in his mind for the next year, the words that would become the cornerstone of his quiet rage. "My husband," Imani said with a light, dismissive laugh. "He's a good man, I guess. He's sweet. But his ceiling is grading papers. He just doesn't have the drive, you know? He doesn't get this world. I need a partner who gets it." "I get it," Vaughn said, his voice low and intimate. Darius sat in the dark, the flickering light of the TV washing over him. The hockey game was forgotten. He felt a profound coldness spread through his chest, a chilling certainty that the woman in the next room was a stranger. His ceiling is grading papers. The phrase was a clean, sharp blade, severing something deep inside him. It wasn't just an insult, it was a verdict, a dismissal of his entire life, his work, his character, by the one person who was supposed to be his teammate. He got up, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door. He didn't confront her. What was the point? He had heard the truth. The cruelty, after that, was no longer a secret. It was a language they both understood, even if only one of them spoke it aloud. The betrayals escalated, each one a small, sharp stone added to the growing mountain of Darius's silent grief. It started with a scent. 3 months after the overheard phone call, Imani came home at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. Darius had been awake for hours, a knot of dread in his stomach. He'd called her office, her cell, with no answer. When she finally walked in, she looked flushed and happy, her eyes bright. She reeked of expensive whiskey and a cologne he didn't recognize, a sharp, citrusy scent that was nothing like the sandalwood he'd bought her for Christmas. "Where have you been, Imani?" he asked, his voice quiet. "I was worried." She waved a dismissive hand, kicking off her $900 Jimmy Choo heels by the door. "Oh, stop. I was with Vaughn and the team from Sterling Ventures. We closed them. They're in for $5 million. She smiled a triumphant, dazzling smile that didn't touch her eyes. "You can't just walk away from that. This isn't a 9 to 5, Darius. Not everyone's life stops at 5 p.m. "It's 2 a.m., he said, his voice flat. "You smell like a distillery." Her face hardened. The smile vanished. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare try to make me feel small because I'm successful. This is what it takes. I'm sorry if my ambition makes you uncomfortable." She brushed past him, the scent of the strange cologne lingering in the air like an accusation. The next day he saw Vaughn dropping her off in his new car, a sleek, black Audi A7, a car with a sticker price of $70,000. Vaughn was wearing a crisp white shirt, and as he leaned over to say goodbye to Imani, Darius recognized the scent wafting from the open car window. Citrus, sharp and cloying. Then came the battle of the vacations. For their anniversary, Darius had planned a long weekend trip. He'd spent weeks researching, finally booking a secluded cabin near Gatlinburg in the Great Smoky Mountains, a place with a fireplace and a view of the stars, a place where they could reconnect, away from the noise of her world. The deposit was a non-refundable $500, a significant amount for him. He presented it to her one evening, showing her the pictures on his laptop. "No cell service," he said, smiling. "Just us." Imani stared at the screen, her lip curled in a faint sneer. "Camping? Seriously? What are we, college kids?" She closed his laptop, her touch abrupt. "I have a better idea." She opened her own sleek carbon fiber laptop, a $2,800 model her company had paid for. She pulled up a website for a resort in St. Bart's. White sand, turquoise water, private villas with infinity pools. "This is where we're going," she announced. "Vaughn and his girlfriend are going to be there. It's the kind of place where you meet people. People who can move the needle." "Imani, that looks expensive," he said, seeing the price at the bottom of the screen. $15,000 for a week. "We can't afford that." "I can afford it," she corrected him, her voice sharp. "And it's an investment. You have to spend money to make money." "It's our anniversary," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought we could spend it together." "We will be together," she said, already texting on her phone. "Just with better scenery." They didn't go to the Smokies. They didn't go to St. Bart's. They didn't go anywhere. She had to work. And he lost his $500 deposit. A month later, he saw the charge on their shared credit card statement, the one he still paid the majority of. A $14,875 charge from St. Bart's Luxury Villas. The charge was dated during the week of their anniversary. He knew with a sickening certainty that she had gone. And he knew who she had gone with. The financial secrecy became a wall between them. One day he noticed her paychecks, which had been automatically deposited into their joint account for years, had stopped. He brought it up casually, trying to keep the accusation out of his voice. "Hey, I noticed your last deposit didn't come through. Is there a problem with payroll?" She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, I opened a new account. It's just easier to keep my business finances separate." "We're married, Imani," he said. "Our finances are our finances." That's when she looked up, her eyes flashing with anger. "Are you serious? You, who makes less in a year than I pay in quarterly taxes, are going to lecture me about money? It's my money, Darius. I earned it. We are not in the 1950s. I don't need your permission to manage my own earnings." The cruelty of the statement was breathtaking. She had weaponized his modest salary, turning his stability into a weakness, his contentment into a crime. He felt himself shrinking under her gaze, the weight of her contempt pressing down on him. From that day on, a silence grew in the house, thick and suffocating. He continued to deposit his $3,800 monthly paycheck into the joint account to cover the rent, the utilities, the groceries. He had no idea where her money was going, but he had his suspicions. Her wardrobe exploded with new, expensive items. A $2,400 Burberry trench coat appeared in the closet. A pair of $1,200 Christian Louboutin shoes she wore once. Each new object was a testament to the life she was building without him. The final betrayal was the quietest. Their 10th wedding anniversary, the one he'd wanted to celebrate in the mountains. He decided to try one last time. He took a half day off from the college, went to Whole Foods, and spent $150 on ingredients for her favorite meal, pan-seared scallops with risotto. He bought a good bottle of Sancerre, the $40 one she loved. He set the table with their wedding china, the one they'd used twice in 10 years. He lit candles. At 7 p.m., she wasn't home. At 8 p.m., he texted her, "Hey, where are you? Dinner's getting cold." At 9:15 p.m., her reply came. A single, sterile text message. "Sorry, closing a huge deal. Can't break away. Rain check?" He looked at the perfectly seared scallops, the creamy risotto congealing in the pan. He looked at the 2 place settings, the 2 wine glasses. He blew out the candles one by one. He sat at the table in the dark and ate his anniversary dinner alone, the silence of the duplex roaring in his ears. The deal, he knew, was Vaughn. The deal was the finalization of their plan to cut him out, not just from the company, but from her life. He washed the dishes, packed her portion into a Tupperware container, and placed it in the fridge. She never ate it. A week later, he threw it away. The PDF file loaded on his old MacBook, each percentage point of the loading bar a tick of a terrible clock. Fintech underscore series B underscore cap table underscore final dot PDF. The document that appeared on his screen was clean, corporate, and utterly devastating. It was a spreadsheet of souls. He scrolled past the names of venture capital firms and angel investors until he found the section he was looking for, the list of key partners. His father's firm, Jackson Capital, was at the top. Lead investor, Anchor LP. The words pulsed on the screen. His father, who had always maintained a strict policy of not investing in family, had broken his own rule. He hadn't invested in his son. He had invested in his son's wife. A vote of confidence that was, Darius now realized, a test. He kept scrolling. His eyes scanned the columns of numbers, percentages, and vesting schedules. Then he found the executive compensation section. There it was, in black and white, under the heading Performance Bonuses, Series B, Close. Imani Jackson, CEO, $8 million. The number was obscene. It was more money than he would make in 100 years of teaching. It was a figure so large it seemed like a typo. $8 million. He thought of the $150 he'd spent on their anniversary dinner, a splurge that had made him check his bank balance first. He thought of his $500 lost deposit for the cabin in the mountains, a lifetime of his financial anxieties, wiped out in a single wire transfer to her. His eyes moved to the next line. Vaughn Hayes, CFO, $1,500,000. Of course, the loyal lieutenant, rewarded for his service. The nature of that service was becoming clearer by the second. Darius was about to close the document, the sickness in his stomach making it hard to breathe, when he saw it. A small, superscript number next to Imani's bonus amount. A footnote. His father was a man of details, of fine print. Darius scrolled to the bottom of the page. The footnote was highlighted in yellow, a digital flag planted by a calculating hand. Footnote 7b. All executive compensation disbursements are subject to the terms of the partnership agreement, including Section 11.4, spousal disclosure and consent for all married principals on compensation packages exceeding $1 million. He read it again and again. Spousal disclosure and consent. A standard clause in many partnership agreements designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation, a bitter divorce battle that could threaten the stability of the company. He thought back through the last 6 months, the late nights, the secret phone calls, the financial wall she had built between them. Had she ever brought him a document to sign? A form? Anything? No, of course not. Because to bring him the form would be to reveal the $8 million bonus. And to reveal the bonus would be to give him a reason to stay, to fight. Her plan required a clean, swift amputation. She had made a critical mistake. She had underestimated the quiet, methodical man who graded papers. And she had underestimated his father. At that exact moment, as the full weight of the clause settled in his mind, his laptop screen dinged with a new email notification. It was 6:47 a.m. The subject line made the blood in his veins turn to ice. Subject, divorce filing. Imani Jackson and Darius Jackson. The sender was a name he recognized from billboards on the highway into the city. A high-powered, notoriously ruthless divorce attorney from a firm in Green Hills, the wealthy enclave where Imani's office tower stood like a monument to her ambition. The email was brief, professional, and brutal. It informed him that a petition for divorce had been filed that morning in Davidson County Court. It attached a copy of the petition. It suggested he retain counsel. He clicked on the attachment. He saw his name, his address, his life, reduced to legal jargon. And there, on the third page, under the section for division of assets, he saw the declaration. It stated that Imani Jackson's assets were her own, earned after a period of separation, and that Darius Jackson had no claim to her recent professional earnings. It was a lie, built on a lie, timed to perfection. The bonus wire would have hit her new secret bank account around 5:30 a.m. The divorce was filed at 6:45 a.m. It was a coordinated financial and legal strike designed to leave him with nothing but the echo of a life he thought he had. But they had no idea what was coming. They had celebrated the touchdown before the game was over. They had forgotten about the quiet man in the duplex. And they had forgotten about the powerful, patient man who had sent him the playbook. The first move in a chess game is often the quietest. Darius took a deep, shuddering breath, the air tasting of stale coffee and impending conflict. He looked at the two emails on his screen, the cap table from his father and the divorce filing from Imani's lawyer. The betrayal and the weapon, delivered 12 minutes apart. He closed his eyes, picturing Imani. He saw her in her glass-walled office, her back to the sprawling view of Nashville, feeling powerful, invincible, free. She believed she had won. That was her second critical mistake. His phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen displayed her picture, a smiling, happy woman he no longer recognized. He let it ring once, twice, then answered, schooling his voice into a neutral, slightly sleepy tone. "Hey," he said, the word a masterpiece of deception. "Hey, you up? Big day." Her voice was bright, brittle, a performance of cheerfulness that grated on his raw nerves. He could hear the echo of her office, the faint sound of a city waking up behind her. "Yeah, just making some coffee," he lied, the full mug cold beside his hand. He was a math teacher. He dealt in absolutes, in truths. The ease with which the lie came to his lips scared him. "Good luck today, Imani. You've worked hard for this." Each word was a betrayal of the rage screaming in his skull, a carefully placed stone in the wall he was building around his heart. He felt the crisp edge of the printed-out cap table on the table, a paper-thin sword. "Thanks, baby," she said. The endearment a casual, thoughtless cruelty. "I'll call you after the board meeting. It's just a formality, but once it's done, we're celebrating. Big time." "Sounds good," he said. "Knock 'em dead." He hung up, his hand trembling. He was playing dumb, inhabiting the role she had written for him. The simple, clueless husband, the man whose ceiling was grading papers. It was a bitter, humiliating part to play, but he knew it was his only advantage. Her plan depended on his ignorance. He would give it to her, in spades. An hour later, at 8:15 a.m., a text message buzzed on his phone. It was from her. Can you believe it? "The wire just hit. $8 million. I'm looking at it in my account right now. We are celebrating at Kane Prime tonight. My treat. No limits." The series of exclamation points, the casual mention of the exact amount, it was a victory lap. She was gloating. He stared at the message, the words blurring. My treat, my account, the language of separation. He took a screenshot of the text. Then with a steady hand he replied, "Wow, that's incredible. You deserve it. Can't wait for tonight." He felt like a spy in his own life, a stranger in his own skin. He forwarded the screenshot of her text to his father. He added no comment. None was needed. Now for the next act in his performance. He had to discover the divorce. He waited 20 minutes, a lifetime of agony, then called her. He pitched his voice to sound confused, hurt, the voice of a man blindsided. "Imani, what's going on?" he asked, letting a tremor enter his words. I just got an email from a lawyer. It says you're divorcing me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. He could hear her take a breath, shifting from celebratory CEO to deliverer of bad news. The voice that came back was cooler, more distant. Oh, Darius, I'm sorry you found out that way. I was going to tell you tonight at dinner. Tell me what? That you're leaving me? It's just, we've grown apart, she said, reciting a script that felt worn and insincere. My life is going in a different direction, a faster direction. We want different things. The opening was there. He took it. He let a beat of silence hang in the air. Then he deployed the callback. The words she had spoken in secret a year ago. The words that had lived in his heart like a shard of glass. A direction where my ceiling isn't just grading papers? The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It was a silence so profound he could hear the static, the dead air, the sound of a world tilting on its axis. He had never let on that he'd heard her. In that moment, he had taken back a piece of his power. He had shown her that the man she thought was clueless had been listening all along. When she finally spoke, her voice was a strangled whisper. I have to go. The board meeting is starting. She hung up. He knew that for the first time that morning, Imani was afraid. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. While the charade of the clueless husband played out over the phone lines, a different, colder strategy was being executed in the quiet of the duplex. At 7:15 a.m., after his first call with Imani, Darius had called his father. The phone was answered on the first ring. Darius? James Jackson's voice was a low baritone, calm and measured. It was the voice of a man who moved markets with a single word. A man who had never been known to raise his voice, because he never had to. Dad, Darius said, the single word conveying everything. I saw the wire transfer authorization at 5:58 a.m., his father said, dispensing with pleasantries. The bank confirmed receipt at 6:01 a.m. I saw the court filing notification from my legal counsel at 6:48 a.m. The timing is unfortunate for her. There was no emotion in his voice, just the recitation of facts. Did you sign any disclosure or consent forms regarding her compensation? No, Dad. I never saw anything. I didn't even know the amount until you sent me the cap table. Good, his father said. The word was a cold, hard stone. That simplifies things. The emergency board meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. The agenda item is listed as Review of Executive Compensation and Compliance. I have added you to the Zoom invitation. The link is in your email. What do I do? What do I say? Darius asked, feeling like a child again. You will not say a word, his father instructed, his voice precise. You will join the call at 8:59 a.m. You will ensure your camera is on. You will sit there in your home, and you will be present. Your presence is your statement. I will handle the rest. Do you understand? Yes, Darius said. I understand. Good. Stay calm, son. Justice is not always loud. The line went dead. Darius became a machine of methodical preparation. He was a math teacher. He believed in showing his work. He went to his small home office, a corner of the second bedroom, and turned on his $300 HP printer. One by one, he printed the documents, the evidence of his wife's grand betrayal. First, the email from his father, timestamped 6:03 a.m. Second, the full fintech_series B_cap table _final.pdf with footnote 7b circled in red ink. Third, the email from Imani's divorce attorney timestamped 6:47 a.m. Fourth, the screenshot of Imani's gloating text message about the $8 million, timestamped 8:15 a.m. He then logged into their joint bank account, the one he had faithfully funded and she had abandoned. He printed the statement for the last 12 months. He took a highlighter and marked his steady, twice-monthly payroll deposits of $1,900. Then he marked the date, 6 months prior, when Imani's deposits had abruptly stopped. Finally, he went to the credit card account. He scrolled back to their anniversary. There it was. The charge for $14,875 from St. Bart's Luxury Villas. He printed that page too. He laid the 6 documents out on the oak dining table, the site of so many lonely meals and late-night grading sessions. The papers formed a narrative, a clear, logical proof of a calculated crime. It was a story of greed, deception, and breathtaking arrogance. He looked at the stack of evidence, a flimsy pile of paper that held the weight of his shattered marriage. He felt no satisfaction, only a deep, hollow ache. He had his proof. Now, all he had to do was wait. The clock on the wall ticked toward 9 a.m. At 8:59 a.m., Darius clicked the Zoom link. His webcam, a cheap $40 Logitech he used for virtual office hours, flickered to life. He saw his own face, stark and tired, reflected on the screen. Behind him, the familiar backdrop of his living room, the overflowing bookshelf, the framed print of a Kandinsky painting they'd bought at a street fair, the worn armchair, the geography of a life she was trying to erase. He was the first one in the virtual waiting room. Then, one by one, other names appeared. The board members. Strangers to him, but people whose names he recognized from Imani's excited chatter over the years. Then, Vaughn Hayes. Then, at 9 a.m. sharp, Imani. And finally, James Jackson. The host started the meeting. A grid of faces populated his screen. He saw the board members, mostly older white men in expensive suits, looking confused about the emergency summons. He saw Vaughn sitting beside Imani in her office, a smug proprietary arm draped over the back of her chair. He looked like the cat that had swallowed the canary. And he saw Imani. She was radiant, a queen holding court. She wore a severe cream-colored Armani blazer that he knew cost $8,700, more than a semester of his salary. Her hair was styled in elegant, intricate braids. Her makeup was flawless. She was the very picture of success, a portrait of power and control. Then, her eyes scanned the grid of participants. He saw the moment she saw him. Her face, a carefully constructed mask of triumph, didn't just fall, it shattered. The color drained from her luminous, deep brown skin, leaving it ashen. Her mouth opened slightly, a small, round O of disbelief. The smile froze, then melted into a look of pure, unadulterated panic. She shot a wild-eyed glance at Vaughn, who frowned, confused, his eyes following hers until they landed on the small, unassuming box labeled Darius Jackson. Vaughn's smirk faltered. A new box highlighted at the top of the screen. James Jackson. Darius's father was in his own office, a wall of books behind him. He was a distinguished, powerful-looking black man, his salt-and-pepper locks immaculately groomed, his eyes sharp and intelligent behind a pair of simple, black-framed glasses. He radiated a calm authority that silenced the room before he even spoke. "Good morning, everyone," his father began, his voice smooth and even. "Thank you for joining on such short notice. I have called this emergency meeting of the board to address a critical and time-sensitive matter regarding executive compensation and our adherence to the partnership agreement." Imani found her voice, a high, strained version of her usual confident tone. "James, what is this about? And why is my husband on this call?" James Jackson ignored her question. He did not even look at her box on the screen. He looked directly into his camera, as if addressing each person individually. "As you know, the Series B funding was successfully closed this morning. Per the terms of her contract, a performance bonus of $8 million was wired to Ms. Jackson. However, an issue of compliance has been brought to my attention." He shared his screen. A PDF of the partnership agreement appeared. With his cursor, he highlighted a section. Section 11.4. I'll read the relevant clause aloud, he said. Spousal disclosure and consent for all married principals on compensation packages exceeding $1 million. A standard clause? I'm sure we're all familiar. He stopped sharing the screen. He looked at Imani's box. Imani, can you confirm for the board that you are currently married to Darius Jackson? She stammered, her composure unraveling. Yes, but we're separated. It's complicated. Are you legally separated? James asked, his tone unwavering. Well, no, but... So you are married, he stated, not as a question, but as a fact. And can you confirm for the board that you provided the required spousal disclosure and consent form to your husband and submitted it, as per the agreement? The silence was deafening. Every eye in the grid was on Imani. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. It was an oversight, she whispered, her voice cracking. An administrative error. An $8 million administrative error, James Jackson said, his voice laced with ice. An error you apparently intended to rectify with this. He shared his screen again. This time it was the email from her divorce attorney. The subject line, the filing timestamp of 6:47 a.m., was there for all to see. Gasps were audible from the other board members. It appears, James continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, a quiet, devastating indictment, that Ms. Jackson intended to defraud this board and her partner by securing the bonus and immediately dissolving the marriage to avoid any claim. This is not an oversight. This is a calculated material breach of her employment contract and her fiduciary duty to this company. He stopped sharing. Vaughn Hayes, he said, his attention snapping to the CFO. As the chief financial officer, were you aware of this bonus? And were you aware that the spousal consent was not obtained? Vaughn, pale and sweating, began to bluster. I was not privy to her personal... James Jackson cut him off. You signed the wire transfer authorization, Mr. Hayes. Your signature is on the document. Complicity in fraud is grounds for immediate termination for cause. The room was silent. Darius watched as Imani put her head in her hands. Vaughn stared at the screen, his mouth agape. Therefore, James Jackson announced, his voice ringing with finality, I am calling for a vote on 3 motions. Motion 1, to immediately claw back the $8 million bonus paid to Imani Jackson, effective immediately. Motion 2, to immediately terminate the employment of CFO Vaughn Hayes for cause, for his role in this breach. And Motion 3, to freeze all of Imani Jackson's vested and unvested equity pending a full, independent investigation into this and other potential breaches of conduct. We will begin the vote with Mr. Albright. One by one, the board members, their faces grim, unmuted themselves. Aye. 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 It was a death knell, a chorus of condemnation. Imani looked up, her face a mask of desperation and rage. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. You can't do this, she screamed, her voice raw. This is my company. I built this from nothing. James Jackson looked at her then, a flicker of something, pity perhaps, in his eyes. You built it with our money, he said, his voice quiet, but carrying the force of a thunderclap, and you built it on a lie. He looked at Darius's small box on the screen, a brief, affirming nod. Then he turned back to the board. This meeting is adjourned. The Zoom window closed, leaving Darius in the sudden, profound silence of his North Nashville duplex, the ghost of his wife's screaming face still imprinted on the screen. The fallout was not a single explosion, but a cascade of consequences, each one a direct result of the choices Imani had made. The world she had so carefully constructed, a world of glass towers and 8-figure bonuses, came down not with a bang, but with a series of quiet, devastating clicks. The first click was the sound of a bank wire being reversed. At 10:05 a.m., less than an hour after the Zoom call ended, the $8 million that had briefly graced Imani's secret account was gone, clawed back by the company's bank under the authority of the board. The number in her account went from $8 million and change to a few thousand, the seed money she'd siphoned from their joint account months ago. The second click was an email from Human Resources. At 11:30 a.m., Vaughn Hayes was officially terminated for cause. His corporate accounts were locked, his access card to the Green Hills Tower was deactivated, and a sterile email informed him that due to the nature of his termination, none of his unvested stock options would be honored. His potential million-dollar payday vanished into thin air. He was escorted from the building by security, carrying his belongings in a small cardboard box. The third click was a formal letter, delivered by courier to Imani's desk at 2 p.m. It placed her on immediate, indefinite administrative leave and informed her that her equity, once valued on paper at nearly $40 million, was frozen. She was locked out of the company she had founded, a pariah in the kingdom she had built. The consequences rippled outward. The Nashville tech and investment community was small and insular. The story, in its broadest strokes, was everywhere by nightfall. The ambitious CEO, who tried to cheat her husband and her lead investor, who turned out to be her husband's father, was a story too juicy to contain. Imani's reputation, the currency she valued above all else, was rendered worthless. Phone calls went unreturned. Lunch invitations were rescinded. The doors that had once flown open for her were now shut and bolted. The divorce, which she had initiated as a power play, became her final humiliation. With no $8 million bonus and her primary asset frozen and likely worthless, her legal position collapsed. Her high-priced Green Hills lawyer, seeing no path to a lucrative contingency fee, suddenly became much less attentive. Darius, on the advice of his father's counsel, asked for very little. He didn't want her money, he wanted peace. The final settlement was simple. He kept the duplex and all its contents, as he had been the one paying the rent and for the furnishings. She walked away with her personal belongings and a mountain of debt from her profligate spending. She had to sell her white BMW 3 Series, the $43,000 symbol of her arrival, to cover her legal fees and first month's rent on a small apartment in a less fashionable part of town. Darius's phone, which had been silent for most of the day, began to light up that evening with a series of frantic, desperate messages from a number he no longer had saved as wife. 7:15 p.m. Text: Darius, what did you do? Call me. 8:30 p.m. Text: This was you and your father. You planned this. You set me up. After everything I did for us. You ruined me. 9:45 p.m. Voicemail: Darius, it's me. Please pick up the phone. We can fix this. I know I made mistakes. I was under so much pressure, but we can walk this back. I love you. I've always loved you. Just call me. Her voice was thick with tears, a performance of contrition he no longer believed. 11 p.m. Text: You think you've won, don't you? You and your sanctimonious father. You think you're better than me? You're a high school teacher in a cheap house. You'll always be nothing. 1:30 a.m. Text: I'm sorry. He read the last text in the quiet of his living room, the room that was now solely his. He didn't reply. He simply turned off his phone, went to bed in the center of the cool, spacious sheets, and for the first time in over a year, he slept through the night. A year can be a lifetime. 1 year after the Zoom call that broke his life open, Darius stood on the porch of a small, rustic cabin, a mug of coffee warming his hands. He had sold the duplex in North Nashville, the ghosts of his former life holding no more power over him. With the proceeds and a small, modest loan, he had bought this place, A two-bedroom cabin on 3 acres of wooded land in Bells Bend, a quiet, rural corner of Davidson County that felt a world away from the frantic energy of the city. The only skyline he saw now was the jagged line of oak and hickory trees against the morning sky. The only sound was the gentle flow of the Cumberland River at the bottom of the hill, and the buzz of cicadas in the late summer air. He still taught mathematics at Nashville Community College. The $58,000 salary hadn't changed, but he had found that the elegant certainty of a solved equation, the quiet satisfaction of leading a student to a moment of clarity, was more valuable to him than any 8-figure bonus. He was happy. It was a simple, unadorned happiness, as solid and real as the wooden porch beneath his feet. On Saturdays, he drove his 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on the odometer back into North Nashville, to the community center a few blocks from where he used to live. He had started a free SAT prep program for local high school kids, focusing on the math section. He wanted to give them the tools to see the patterns, to solve the problems, to build a logical foundation for their own futures. He didn't have a child of his own, but these kids, in a way, had become his legacy. This particular Saturday afternoon, as he was erasing a long string of quadratic equations from the whiteboard, a young woman named Kiana approached him. She was a junior, a brilliant, sharp-witted girl with bright eyes and hair adorned with colorful beads that clicked when she moved her head. She was holding a folded piece of paper. "Mr. Jackson," she said, her voice a little shy. "This is for you." He took the paper and unfolded it. It was a drawing, done in colored pencil. It depicted a figure at a whiteboard, a tall black man with locks tied back, a friendly smile on his face, surrounded by a chaotic cloud of numbers and symbols. The artist had captured his likeness with a surprising, affectionate accuracy. Underneath the drawing, in neat, careful handwriting, Kiana had written, "Thank you, Mr. Jackson. You make math make sense." He smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you, Kiana. This is the best thing I've seen all week." "Turn it over," she said, bouncing on the balls of her feet. He flipped the paper. On the back, she had drawn a simple line graph. The x-axis was labeled practice tests, and the y-axis was score. A red line jaggedly, but definitively, climbed from the bottom left to the top right. It was a picture of progress, a picture of growth. He looked up from the drawing, his deep brown skin luminous in the afternoon light filtering through the classroom's tall windows. He felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. This was wealth. Not the fleeting, volatile wealth of stock options and wire transfers, but the real, durable wealth of impact. The wealth of a foundation built not on what you could accumulate for yourself, but on what you could give to others. He thought of Imani and her desperate, furious quest for more. He thought of his father, whose immense financial power was always secondary to his unwavering principles. His father had once told him, "A man's worth isn't measured by his highest achievement, but by his lowest temptation." Imani had failed that test. He hoped, in his own quiet way, that he was passing it. Have you ever had a moment that redefined what wealth and success mean to you? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you've ever felt underestimated, know that your true value isn't determined by someone else's limited vision. As he was packing up his bag, the door to the classroom opened. It was Imani. He hadn't seen her in almost a year. She was different. The expensive blazer was gone, replaced by a simple dress. The armor of her ambition was gone, leaving behind a woman who looked smaller, more fragile. "Darius," she said, her voice quiet, "I heard you were here. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You were right." I was wrong? He looked at her, at the woman who had been the center of his world, who had nearly destroyed him. He felt no anger, no bitterness, only a quiet, sad finality. I appreciate that, Imani, he said, and he meant it. He had forgiven her long ago, not for her sake, but for his. I hope you find what you're looking for. He picked up his bag, the student's drawing safe inside. He walked past her, out of the classroom, and into the bright, warm sunlight of the rest of his life. He had learned that true love isn't about pride, and true wealth isn't about money. It's about knowing your own worth, even when no one else does. It's about building a life so solid in its foundation of character and kindness that when the storms come, you are not shaken.